Hello everyone and good morning. So had a chance to do two drafts this weekend here on opening weekend for Covert Missions. So I just kind of wanted to go through and do a hot or not-ish review on certain cards. Actually, this is more so just the hot. I'm not going to go through all the knots because we don't need to be here for a long time. Overall for the set, I didn't think the set drafted especially well. Um, it's a little light on removal. The cards that are good, I think, are all in all pretty obvious picks, but the rest of the set didn't seem to go all that well into each other. There's of course a lot of stuff for piloting, but if you don't get a ship and or a pilot, you're kind of SOL for about 50% of the draft. So all in all, I think it's not that different than what used to happen kind of in Across the Galaxy, where if you weren't able to get a ship, you were kind of just stuck with all the mods and mods related stuff. So I'm not saying necessarily that like it was a poorly designed set. I just think it's a byproduct of kind of what happens when they're trying to jam one particular mechanic in the set, while trying to still support other archetypes. So all right, let's get right into it. So first up, this hot card is Vengeful Wookiee. So this guy does serious work in this format. So before you activate him, regardless of how much damage he has, you can re-roll a die. But then if he has 6 or more, you can actually remove a die. So this guy works really well in this format because remember, there's not a lot of dice on the table. So when he comes in, he can reroll your die and then just automatically remove one of their die. And it doesn't say he has to remove a die showing damage. He can just remove a die. So there's a fair amount of indirect that gets dealt in this format as it is. So people were able to put the damage on the Vengeful Wookiee, and once he kind of got to that 6 range, you could just kind of keep him, and he was just online removal once per round, which is really, really, really good. So I realize he doesn't bring a die to the table, and he is 7, but once he gets on, it's pretty good. So I would not look over this guy. He is an uncommon, so you kind of have to take him early and plan ahead around him. But I don't know. I would give a good strong look at Vengeful Wookiee, especially because he can bring Splash Yellow. All right, next characters. So again, all of the non-uniques are always really hot picks in draft as it is, just because they're usually in that 8-point range. But the Wookiee Warrior, the Trandoshan, and the Praetorian Guard all kind of fill those real sexy slots to help you round out your team. Because remember, your draft kit mainly has 11-point characters, right? Dooku and Finn are 11-pointers. So the 8-point slot is a really huge one to fill. The Trandoshan is 9. He works okay because the Outlaw is 10. That's not super ideal because then you're not running a rainbow squad, but there are other options out there. So again, if the Wookiee was a very popular one, we rarely saw the Wookiee move through draft. So basically, if people were seeing the Wookiee, they were taking him. 8 for 10 is really good. All right, next up is Tarfful. Tarfful was a fantastic card, mainly because he's 11. And look at those sides, right? So he has 3 damage sides, the 2 focus. There's actually not a ton of focus in this set alone, which is kind of interesting. So his 2 focus in draft is really strong. Not only that, but he has, of course, the Wookiee ability on the 6 damage, so you can throw the indirect into him and then kind of just make him real strong for his own damage side. And remember, with the 11, right, 11 is the magic number when it comes to characters, because if you're choosing whether to play Finn Rao at 9 or this guy at 11, and by those numbers I mean the health, right? So Finn is 11 points for 9 health. This guy's 11 points for 11 health. Brings a lot better sides to the table. It's just a 1-to-1 swap, right? It's just a no-brainer there. So Tarfful is a real strong pick. I would not pass Tarfful if you get him unless there's something else really good in your packs. All right, just 4 more good cards. So Luke, again, he's 11. The real thing with Luke is his damage sides. He was doing serious work for me on Saturday. I saw a lot of people doing serious work with him. But again, he's 11 points, so he swaps in 1-to-1 for Dooku. Next is Darth Vader. So Darth Vader is 12, which is kind of can be a little tricky, but he's 12 for 12, and this guy did some serious work. Plus, he's leader pilot Sith, which is not irrelevant for your draft kit cards. Next is Boba Fett. Again, he's that 11-point value. Now, he doesn't switch to 1-to-1 with Smuggler, because, or sorry, the Outlaw, the Outer Rim Outlaw, the draft yellow card. He doesn't switch 1-to-1 because that's actually a 10-pointer, but he can swap in for somebody else. Boba Fett, again, 11 health for 11. He has 3 damage sides, none are pay. Very strong. Commander Pyre also is 11 points, right? Obviously, if it's Pyre versus Tarfful, you take Tarfful, no doubt. But Pyre is not to be underestimated. It's not that hard to just, because of the amount of rerolls you have to do and kind of the bad dice you have on the table, a lot of times just to deal that indirect, it's okay to just claim early and throw that damage across the table. And again, he's Leader Trooper, which is not irrelevant for your draft kit cards. So all of these guys here, I think I would look at. Pyre's real good. Luke Skywalker is real good. And obviously, if you get Boba, you're taking him because he's legendary anyway. But Boba's real strong. All right, so moving away from the character cards, the first card that I was taking when I saw it come through is Trap the Blade. So this is remove a die showing melee damage, and then you can pay an extra to discard its matching card from play. This is fantastic because, remember, we're going to see a lot of Dooku Saber in this format, so you can automatically get rid of that. It doesn't stop them from getting the effect when they drop it, but again, there's only so many dice cards your opponent has in your deck in this format, and being able to take one off the table for granted your turn's resources, but it saves you not only the damage that turn, but it also drops it for good. So Trap the Blade's a real strong card in this format if you can manage to slash blue. Alright, next is Fortitude. So I'm not a huge fan of this card from a constructed standpoint, but in this format, this, plus 3 health, plus 4 health, can basically buy you at least 1 more turn, if not 2 more turns, which I grant isn't a huge difference from probably standard, except that it's just the lower efficiency in draft, and being able to put something on your guy, because you're not necessarily going to get redeploys, you're depending on those dice. Being able to get 1 or 2 turns out of your best guy is not to be underestimated. So this one, I think, outperforms in the draft format versus obviously standard. Alright, these next 2 cards really highlight how strong yellow is in this set from a draft standpoint. So both of these cards are just damage out of hand. So Taken by Surprise is just deal 1 damage to a ready character. You're probably not spotting a mission plot. I guess you could, but that's probably not a very efficient building of your team. The next is Opportune Strike. If each of your opponents has an exhausted character and no dice showing damage, deal 2 indirect to each of them. Again, it's just burn damage from hand. You're going to be able to find it, even if you have to wait till the end of the turn till they resolve all of their dice. You're going to be able to play this. It's just 2 indirect from hand. There's also another card, I'm not showing it here, but Improvised Explosive is also a really sweet little card in this format. Alright, Recurring Nightmare. So overall, I don't think that this is a great card from like a constructed standpoint, but it's real strong in draft just because, again, dice cards are harder to get. So I wouldn't be passing this card just because you think it's a bad card. This is, you put it on the guy, they roll in, you get a chance to hit, right? There's not a lot of, actually, I don't know if there's any action cheating in this set. So, and even if there is, the chance of them having it in a draft format is exceedingly low, right? So they will roll their guy in, this rolls into your pool, remember, and then you can immediately resolve this die. This did work all weekend. This did work all Friday night for me, and then I saw people yesterday who had managed to get it who were doing some pretty dirty things as well. Alright, next is Entropic Blast. I was able to get 2 of these on Friday. This card is super dirty in draft because remember, generally each person you're playing is going to be playing a 3-wide with 3 dice. Those dice are not necessarily hitting every time, so to maximize rerolls, people will roll in generally their characters before they start resolving dice. So it's not that hard to plant 6 into your opponent early. It is your turn's resources, I grant you that, and it does hurt your ramp, but 6 damage out of hand early can really swing the game in your favor. I did work with this on Friday. I saw a guy win a game basically because of this on Saturday as well. So do not underestimate the strength of this card in draft. Alright, next is kind of along the same lines, so Quad Slam. Choose up to 4. So again, you don't have to choose 4, so you don't have to hit yourself. Choose up to 4 and remove 1 character die belonging to each of them. This is also kind of a time walk card for the same argument as Entropic Blast. A lot of times they'll get multiple characters out because they won't be hitting, and you can just remove their dice. So this is a real good card in draft as well. Swing in. So this one's interesting, and you do have to set up your team. So I originally passed this, and then somebody just smacked me with it on Friday night. Spot any number of characters that each have 10 or more health to roll 1 character die on each of them into your pool. So for 2, you basically get an extra, because generally you'll be able to get your team with 2 10s or 11s, unless of course you're playing with Dooku and stuff like that. But on Saturday, for example, I was able to roll in a Luke and a Kragan 1 turn for the second time, and that so it worked. I mean, it doesn't work. It's not super amazing, but getting 2 extra dice if you have nothing else to do is not bad early. All right, so this last card I want to note, I was wrong on this one. So Amy had pulled it early, and she was thinking about playing it, and I was like, oh, I don't think it's, and by pulled it early, I mean on Saturday she pulled it early, and when putting decks together, she was kind of like, oh, what do you think about this? I was like, I don't know about it. And then she ended up throwing it on her Tarfful in the second round, in between rounds, and she was real impressed with how well this card worked. Getting her, because I mean, if money's out there in draft, you're often taking it. I didn't think she was going to be rolling it that often to make it worth it, but she said a lot of times what she'd do is she'd throw it out there, she'd get the money, use it for an overwrite, and get the extra die back. So she was very impressed with this card over the weekend. Like I said, I think it's one of those things that on paper didn't work very well, but she was very pleased with how it worked, so I wanted to make sure I threw that in there. Alright, so those are all the cards that I listed. Obviously, there are a bunch of other great obvious cards out there, but these are the kind of the ones that I wanted to hit on that were not necessarily the obvious stuff, right? The Entropic Blast and the Quad Slams and stuff like that, you'd normally look at and say this is a garbage card, I don't want it, but they're very functionally good in draft. So I would encourage you guys to look at those and think hard about those before passing those in your pack. So anyway, what else did you guys find interesting over the weekend if you've been able to do drafts? I know other people have drafts coming up, so good luck on those. But let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments, and if nothing else, go Commando.